It's first time really being introduced to a marriage. I can't even say a healthy relationship, but just saying a marriage. All these Black people, different set of African people, like we're in the hood. Like, what is going on here? Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated to providing you with life strategies with a little bit of entrepreneur advice. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey, good people. Welcome back to the Networking with Michelle show. We are here another day, another week, a few dollars earned. Believe it or not, we are blessed than many, right? Blessed than most. So today's episode, I'm coming back with another interview that I'm very, very proud of. And this interview is actually a new friend I met this spring or summer, when the Black Enterprise had their Entrepreneur Summit. I met a young lady, great marketing brand strategist, Nia Perry. And we swapped interviews out at the time, and she's been on the show. And she's just a sweet spirit, a very sweet soul. And I love the interview I did with her because this interview allowed me to talk about a lot of things on a very personal, intimate level as far as how I grew up. And what I'm beginning to realize at the age of 35, knowing your family origin gives you a greater understanding to who you are. Knowing your family origin gives you a greater understanding to who you are. And I've just been exploring that this year on so many levels. And that may have to be a podcast episode, maybe 2 podcast episodes in itself, right? Because I might just need one for myself and then, get an expert on here. But she just asked some great questions that really allow me to think back, allow me to tap into thoughts and feelings that I don't have a chance to say out loud on a very frequent basis. And for that, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the interview. And I'm always consumed with a book idea. And one book I've really been working on, technically for 4 years, off and on for 4 years, is a book called Remaining True to My Narrative. And it's really going to be a memoir. And a lot of the things in this interview is the foundation of what this book can possibly be in the near future. So once again, I'm grateful. Shout out to Nia Perry, Gradient Global, an amazing brand. I wanted to share this interview with y'all because once again, I hope it's something that you can get from it. You can learn about me a little bit more. And, any questions, feedback, or whatever the case may be, I want to hear from you at the end of the day. So make sure you reach out to me, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email, pigeons, doves, just find me somewhere in Houston. But just know I believe in you, I love you, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
So as mentioned in your bio, you refer to yourself as a connection strategist.
Yes.
What is a connection strategist? Tell us.
So a connection strategist is getting past the point of networking. Networking is very important, but getting past that and really focusing on finding and deepening those relationships, right? So with that, finding the relationships, really the networking part, making sure that you're going to the right events and not just casually going to a happy hour. But, okay, this is my goal, right? Maybe a career goal, transition goal. Where can I find these like-minded people? And then not focusing on a stack of business cards, but of having one quality conversation and really honing in on that relationship over time. Yeah. And I help a lot of transitioners, go through that current phase that they're experiencing.
Okay. All right, great. That's so important. I love the fact that you said the deepening of those relationships, because it's one thing to sort of go and meet people and, kind of do the business card thing, like you said, but the real fostering of that relationship is really where you're going to get the benefit and how you can benefit another.
Right. So it's definitely quality over quantity.
Yeah.
a quality conversation over quantity of business cards.
Agreed. Because those things are not cheap, by the way. They say, here, I got the sandwich cards. They're not cheap.
Yeah, when you branding like Grady and Global, you're
Come
right.
on now. That's right. Awesome. So, Michelle, I believe personally that our stories, our personal stories, our growing up, right, form who we become and many of the decisions that we make in life. So, on your website, michellegomez.com, which I'll have in the show notes, you've been pretty transparent about some of your sort of childhood challenges. So,
Yeah.
tell us about some of those, early life obstacles that you faced.
Oh man, where do I begin? I think the most significant and ongoing one is the fact that my parents are from Cameroon in West Africa, a country in West Africa next to Nigeria.
Okay.
So just really being born and grown up in a culture difference. I was born in the States. I was born in Alva, Oklahoma, but most of my yeah, I try to bypass
ALVA, Alva?
Yeah. My mom was
Alva, Oklahoma.
She was passing through and she decided to stop and have me, and then we kept going.
Yeah. But shout out to Alva, Oklahoma.
No, but I think the biggest challenges have been culture and race. Early on, once again, my parents are African. And even though I was born in the States, I think a lot of Black Americans forget that regardless of school or whatever you do, you are raised, or I was raised in an African household. So there's culture in the household that's different than whatever's being taught at school or amongst your peers at school. And then speaking of Oklahoma, I spent the first 12 years of my life growing up in Lubbock, Texas. And I spent some of those earlier years from like the age of about 5 or 6 going back and forth between Lubbock and Oklahoma. So I was surrounded by predominantly white people, really, school, church. And then at the age of 12, I moved to Atlanta, and that was a big culture shock because I've never seen so many Black people in one spot. And
Atlanta got a whole lot of Black people too.
everywhere. And I remember the first day of school, at North Clay Middle School. It was 8th grade, and all of the students, we have to come in and just stay in the gym before they release us. And I was just like, OMG. It was crazy, and then of course I learned to appreciate it. But, those have been, I guess, the biggest challenges of just overcoming being picked on when I was younger, not being able to have healthy relationships with my parents at a young age because, my friends can do it. Why can't I? And not just understanding those differences. If everyone jumps off the bridge, absolutely, because I don't want to be the last one. I don't want to be by myself.
Okay.
But I think now, obviously, as an adult, it's like, okay, I don't have to jump off the bridge with everyone else. I can find my own way.
Right. So one of the things that you said that you moved at age 12, but that wasn't just like a regular, we're going to pack up and move. That was sort of a more of a shocker, right? So tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Right. So growing up, I was very tomboyish. I lived with my mom and my younger brother. He's 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And she kind of felt like I was out of control. And I don't think I was out of control. I was just very active. I was playing sports. I had friends and they're doing things. We're going to the roller rink and all this kind of stuff. And she wanted me to stay home and look at my brother, or I couldn't go anywhere unless I took him.
Okay.
And it was, once again, just a big misunderstanding based off of culture. She felt like I didn't take my studies serious. So I have spent time with my dad before, but he really wasn't in the household. And in the summer of '96, we went to Atlanta for a wedding, and I also had a chance to see my dad. So the thing was, I was going to stay with my dad and his wife in Atlanta for like a week or two. And then my mom and my brother went back to Lubbock. And I don't know. I feel some kind of way about it, definitely at the time. But my mom later on went to Cameroon for whatever reason. And she did not come back in time for school to start.
Okay.
So I was stuck with my dad in Atlanta, and then my brother was stuck with his dad in Jasper, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a struggle because even though that was my dad, he's still a stranger to me.
Yeah, right.
And then he's married to this woman that's another stranger to me. And then that was really my first time dealing with a man in my life, right? Like this was going to be a permanent thing.
Yeah.
And my past experiences with men or males, I should say, weren't good.
Okay.
So I was just going through several culture shocks with everything, you know, obviously African parents, but now I got this African male in my life that I'm about to live with, who's already married. It's first time really being introduced to a marriage. I can't even say a healthy relationship, but just saying a marriage. You know, all these Black people, different set of African people, like we're in the hood. Like what is going on here? So those were some of the things that were on.
How do you think those things shaped you, like as an adult? What do you think? How do you think those experiences shaped you, positively or negatively? You know?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I suffer from both, right? The positive and the negative effects. I probably say a lot more negative effects when it comes to more of the intimate relationships.
Okay.
But I say on the positive side, when of just being focused, you know, being hyper diligent. Also, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from the craziness of living with my dad and his wife is just, as a woman, I need to have my own, right?
Okay.
And I've been very fortunate. I'll say that I'm smart in the sense that I'm able to learn by observing people,
Sure.
and learn from other people's mistakes.
Okay.
So, and I mean, I don't think they're going to hear this, but
don't be your parents. They might be listening.
I know,
you
right?
don't know. No.
My stepmom just stumbles, you know, I don't know. It's crazy, girl. I mean, there's so much. I'll just say 2 years ago, my dad found me on Facebook. Haven't spoke to the man in 15 years, and then he finds me on Facebook. So who knows? But taking it back, my stepmom. So this is the story. She said she was very well off. She was very good, you know, when she was in Cameroon, when she met my dad, and he probably didn't have anything to his name. I don't know what was going on, but she left all of that and came to America with my dad. And I don't want to say she wasn't educated, but sometimes that education doesn't translate from country to country.
Sure.
Right.
Many immigrants experience that.
Right. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is like, okay, Michelle, you have to get an education. You have to have a career. You have to work hard because you don't want to be in a position where a man thinks he can selfishly dominate over you.
Oh, that's good.
You know, because I'm all for leadership, but, you know, selfishly dominate, which turns into abuse in so many forms.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest positive, but it's hurt.
Yeah.
There's been some negatives with that, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I still hold on to this day.
Yeah. Well, nothing wrong with education and independence. So keep it up. So Michelle, you and I share a love for marketing. And you got your start in marketing by being a street team member during the 2004 Super Bowl weekend in Houston by promoting events and artists. I don't know if I've shared with you that I also was on a street team during, I want to say it was like All-Star Weekend in Atlanta, and I was also an undergrad.
Okay.
And, so, you know, I mean, literally, like we would go to barbershops and beauty salons and drop off these flyers, and we'd be at parties and all, you know, so we got into all the parties free, right? Because we were promoting the parties. We better get in free. So we were like, essentially like really cheap labor, if you think about it. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? So what do you believe you learned about marketing during those early days in your career?
Yeah, at the time I didn't realize it, but I'll definitely say hustle in relationships.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much about, hey, let me drop off these flyers and posters and burn out, you know, just turn around. But it was like, hey, how you doing? What's your name? This your business? Who's the owner? Who's the staff? Especially mentioning the barbershops, that's always going to be popular. But when we had music stores, 15 years ago
Right.
or 17 years ago,
Right.
where you could go to a local music store and really talk to the owner or to the one or two staff that were literally there all day.
Right. Right.
And and
Right.
and then they were honest. It's like you got on the spot feedback, like, oh, we have a lot of people come in for this type of music. Like, you don't have that now. It's just, figure it out online.
Exactly. And it's completely different landscape, right?
It's hard to get feedback, but I think that was the biggest thing, is like creating those relationships.
Okay.
And then getting feedback from your audience. And lots of times when we think about audience, we think of mass people, but sometimes that audience of one is all you need.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Nice. So social media is ever changing, right? How do you keep your finger on the pulse of trends, and what do you recommend that sort of other entrepreneurs can do to do the same?
You have to study, and I mean, that's it. You just have to study. You have to read these articles, listen to podcasts such as this. You just have to take those moments to immerse yourself in your niche.
Okay.
In whatever form of content you appreciate. I don't think it's something that you can only do, right? Because lots of times you can get lost if you're doing the wrong action.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to study and act as well to make sure that you're current. There's so many resources out there. I like, when it comes to social media, I like socialmediaexaminer.com.
Yeah, really good.
Great website, great audio. They also have a conference. I haven't been able to make it yet.
Okay.
But they do a good job on providing information in multiple forms.
Okay.
In order for them to reach the masses. Also, I think lots of times you have to study the influencer or the thought leader ahead of you.
Okay.
Right. I don't think that is said enough. I'm really big, obviously, networking, connections, relationships. I study Paul Brunson, Judy Robinett, other people, Ivan Meisner from BNI, other people that have wrote books or they speak on networking. I go to Amazon and I'm like, okay, what is the title of the book? What are their tags that they're using? How is their website structured? What are they posting on social media?
Yeah.
And so lots of times you're studying, it's not all about reading or listening, but it's observing and analyzing the moves of the thought leader or influencer, whatever you want to call that person within your niche.
That's good. I agree. But not to you want to observe, but not feel the need to be that person or copy their strategies, or because it's never going to resonate the same with you. It's not you're not that person, and it. When people tend to copy or mimic in an inauthentic way, it reads so easily. Like you can tell when something is not authentic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was talking to a potential client earlier this week, and I'm like, she needs to figure out a few things. But I was like, whatever you decide, people are going to come to you based off of your personality and your process.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there's so much noise, but maybe the way you talk or the you break this information down is going to be better than the next person.
That's good. I like it. That's true. So let's talk about, on a more personal note, like how social media, which I thought this was an interesting story, how social media led you to find your long lost sister. So we heard about your brother, your dad, your mom, your stepmom. Tell us about your long lost sister and how social media brought that relationship to you.
Social media is crazy.
Yeah.
I have benefited a great deal from social media. Before I get to my sister, when MySpace was hot and I was doing a lot of the street team and indie music promotions, I was doing, had a lot of that stuff on my MySpace page, and I was looking for a part-time job. And the lady that interviewed me was like my age, so whatever, in my 20s at that time. And she's like, you have a really cool profile. That's why I called you. And she's like, you're hired. I was like, okay. So I got a job because of my MySpace profile.
Okay.
And then a couple of months later, I just remember walking into work, and I log in, and of course I go to MySpace, and I get this message. Paraphrasing, it was like, "I know you don't like me, but I'm your sister Yvonne, and
I know you
we
don't
have."
like me.
I mean, I'm sorry. I know you don't know me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was
I
like,
know you don't know
dang,
me.
okay.
No, I know you don't know me, but I'm your sister Yvonne.
Wow.
Thomas is our father,
Wow.
and I knew who she was.
Okay.
The crazy thing was, because she lives in Atlanta too.
Okay.
So I have always known about her, but I never met her.
Okay.
And one time when I had already moved to Houston, this was probably 2001 or 2002. I remember my friend Patrick, he was an RA for the dorm or whatever at Georgia State.
Okay.
And he was like, "I was doing something and I saw this girl with your same last name. Is that your sister?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know her." Like,
wow.
Very casual because I've always known about her.
Right. Well, you're a kind of casual person. I don't know if people don't know that about you. You're like,
yeah. I'm very laid back. But no, it was, I guess, a sad situation because, I mentioned my stepmom earlier. That's the stepmom I know of, right? So my dad, he didn't marry my mom, but he married another woman, had my sister, they got divorced, and then he married another woman, and that's the woman I know as my stepmom.
Okay.
And so she sent me that message, my sister, she sent me that message. I think this was 2006. On MySpace, we started messaging back and forth. We jumped on the phone within an hour.
Wow.
Then I want to say that Christmas, like within 6 months, she flew to Houston and we met.
Wow.
And then she's been to Houston a couple of times, and I go to Atlanta just about every year, and we see each other. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're cool. I think it's one of those things where I've always wanted a sister, but we're not as tight as I would like us to be.
Yeah.
So many things. But, it's definitely my heart.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. What a great story. Thank you for sharing that. So you wrote, we're going to pivot a little bit. You wrote your book, Network, Navigate, Nurture, The Equation to Strategic Networking, really during a sort of a difficult time in your life. So tell us what was going on, if you don't mind, just a little high level, whatever you're comfortable with. And then how are you able to write in a time of significant stress and pressure?
Oh, man. I might need this question for right now. Yeah, so Network, Navigate, and Nurture came out in 2014.
Okay.
And the thing, I sat on that idea for a year and a half to 2 years because I was just too busy in life. I was working full time. I was in grad school. I was on the board of 2 organizations. And great idea, but, I'll get to it later. And basically, the book wrote itself in the sense that people would always come up to me and like, "Michelle, how do you know so many people? You're always at an event, da-da-da-da-da." And they were asking me questions. So the book is really based off of a lot of questions that I would receive from people just through conversations, emails, events, or whatever the case may be. And in 2014, well, let me back up. October 2013, I decided to quit my job. I was like a month or two away from getting my grad degree, had money saved up, was going to quit my job and do this entrepreneurship thing. And, I had clients here and there, whatever, but it wasn't enough to sustain. And eventually, my money dried up, and I was faced with an option where I could have borrowed money to keep my apartment, or I decided to move out because my concern was, even though I can borrow money this month, what about next month? And I was so close to finishing my lease. So I decided to turn in my keys. And it was very hard because at that time, I was 30, 31 years old or whatever. And my car was paid off. I have this apartment. I got this grad in 2 degrees. And it's like on paper.
Yeah.
On paper, I got my stuff together.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, it was like, "Michelle, this is the only thing you have and you can't keep it."
Mm.
You know, you're
Mm.
31 years old or
Mm.
whatever, and
Mm.
what do you have to like? You can't keep your $1,000 apartment. What do you have to show
Mm.
for yourself?
This is all mental talk. This is all
Right,
what you're, yeah, of course.
right.
Right. Of course.
And I have a big ego where my ego is tied to my money. So if my money's
Oh.
not right, a lot of things are probably not right with
Mm.
me.
That's very
Mentally.
self-reflective of you. That's very
Oh,
honest of you.
yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't take nothing away, self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, I didn't have an apartment. I didn't have a place to stay for a while. And then
So where were you
something told
staying, if you don't mind me asking?
I stayed on a friend's sofa for a couple of days, my
Mm.
best friend.
Okay.
And then eventually I stayed at a family friend's apartment. She had a 2-bedroom apartment, so I stayed in the extra bedroom
Yeah.
for about 6 months. And then
Okay.
I moved to my mom's house for about, I think, a year, or a little less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
But during that process of me moving,
Mm-hmm.
moving out of my apartment, it was like, Michelle, you need to write this book. Like,
Okay.
you're losing, I mean, even though an apartment is not an asset on paper, but in my mind is like, you're losing the biggest asset you have,
Mm.
and you need to write this book. Like, it kind of like you have nothing to show for yourself.
Mm.
If you write this book, you have something to show for yourself.
Okay.
And it was just crazy how things were, because I was applying for jobs like in January, February, March. I lost my apartment like May or June, like the end of May.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the apartment goes, 2 companies hire me.
Wow.
I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah. Interesting. Huh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have income. And one of the jobs I got, I'm actually still there. It's been 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, you have a master's degree. We're only paying you $7.25.
Mm.
And I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about this later. But people have to understand, it's like you need income before you can worry about cash flow.
Mm.
And at the time, I just needed some income.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got another job, and I just made it work. And so when those checks came in, my thing was, I didn't know how I was going to afford to publish my book,
Okay.
because I had rent. Like, rent was my biggest thing, and I had
Right.
no income. So now that I had $1,100 or just $1,500 cleared out,
Mm-hmm.
now I had the money to write my book.
Okay.
So whatever I was putting towards my rent, I just put towards my book. I wrote my book in like 6 weeks, sent it to the editor. Yeah, because it was great. I was writing at work. I took a job overnight because, once again, I was worried about my living situation.
Yeah.
So I applied to a group home, and I was like, well, I can work overnight.
Wow.
Because if I work overnight, at least I'm safe, right?
Okay.
I don't have to worry about being in a parking lot or anything creepy. I don't have to worry about where to go. I don't have to interfere with my friends. So I can work overnight. I'm in a house. I can do my laundry. I can eat.
Wow.
During the day, I can meet people, clients. I had like keys to my friends' apartments, like 3 of my friends. And you know how people say you can stay if you want, but it's like, all of us, we have a 1-bedroom apartment. You know, if I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wear out my welcome very quick.
Right.
But I was like, I know if they're at work from 8 to 5, I can crash on the couch,
Okay.
you know, and I can leave before they get there. You know, it was very strategic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once again, we worry about so much about the dollar amount, because $7.25 is not a lot of money, but it's a lot when you don't have nothing.
Mm.
Able to leverage that $7.25. It's like, oh, well, I'm working in a home, right? I'm not working at an office.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working at a home overnight.
Okay.
There's food. There's a washer and dryer. I can take a shower.
Right. So the cost, the benefits outweighed what the dollar amount was to you.
Right.
Right.
And I just stayed there, and I wrote my book. I was working over graveyard. I just wrote my book at night, typed it up, and I just made it work.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. I'm proud of you, and I'm glad you did. So way to go. So in the book, you notate 4 steps to getting started with strategic networking. First, you define what networking is, then how to navigate the professional maze, how to navigate the digital space, and really how to nurture the leader. What does nurture the leader mean before I actually get into the real question I had for that? what is nurture the leader?
Nurture the leader is about 2 parts. Mentoring, the mentor-mentee relationship,
okay,
as well as just service, volunteering, giving back to your community.
Okay, that's good. I like it. Okay, so let me ask you this. So, what would you say to entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs and or that may be listening, right? Provide them with tips on how to become an effective networker, not just how to network, but an effective networker, and why really strategic networking is so important.
Right. So the reason why strategic networking is so important is because, once again, we talk about the transitions in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of times when we hang out with friends, we don't have an agenda. That's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you know you want to go for that promotion, an internal promotion within your company,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're looking for a new job, or maybe you're transitioning from employee to entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
there's an objective. There needs to be a strategy behind that. Like, how are you going to minimize this transition? And that's where the strategic networking or the strategic networking plan comes into play. And it's no longer about casually hanging out or casually networking at random places. But it's like, okay, if I want to go for this promotion, who is the hiring manager? Oh, okay, this is the hiring manager, and my company has an affinity group.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to start participating with that affinity group, so I can become close to her, right? Or maybe I need to send that email and be like, hey, can I job shadow you one day? And I've done this. All of this stuff, I've done it. I came across this job on the company website. Is it okay if I can job shadow and speak to you for about 10 to 15 minutes?
Yeah, that's good.
That way I can have a better understanding of the job before I apply.
Yeah, that's good.
And then when that application comes in, even though it's internal, at least they recognize your name, right?
Sure.
And I mean, whether they have someone in mind or not. That's
sure.
So that's where the strategic networking comes in, and it's about relationships. Because lots of times when people are looking for a job, it's last minute. It's like, oh, I lost my job. Now, people sense that desperation, right? Whether you're at an event or it's the hiring manager at the interview, they sense that desperation. But if you're networking casually, well, I don't know if that's the right word, but effectively over a long period of time, you can shoot some emails, some phone calls, and be like, hey, this is my situation. Can you help me?
So I like that idea for the entrepreneur, right? Because I think people, you don't ever want to look like you're only asking when you need. And
Right.
I think we're all kind of guilty of that, not realizing it. It's the things that you learn along the journey of being an entrepreneur. But I like that concept for doing that even before you need someone, even as an entrepreneur, right? Would you agree? Like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And because that's the thing. So many people want to cash in chips immediately.
Oh, that's a tweetable, girl. Hold on.
Now. And sometimes you have to wait. Like, I know there's ideas I'm sitting on.
Yeah.
Like, Michelle, you just have to wait because it's such a big ask.
Yeah.
That if I'm not in full position, it can ruin my reputation.
That's good.
And I don't think people think about that, thinking of what's in it for me. Like, oh, I need this client. Give me this client. And what if something just goes bad, right?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think we think too far ahead, and I'm just so long-term focused.
Yeah.
I'm willing to endure in the short term. But one thing is, I have to make sure I have a clean reputation. And I mean, that's your personal brand. Let's just speak to that. It's your personal brand. When you walk out of the room, what are people saying about you? And I'm very particular about who I connect with, or maybe I don't want the details, like, okay, y'all two got running this same area. Y'all can help each other out. but you just got to keep your reputation intact, because when you lose your money and resources, people are banking on your name. Like I've seen Michelle, or I've seen Nia done this before, and she's done this for so long and she's consistent, she can do it again.
Sure.
But if you're like cashing in your chips early and you're burning bridges moments later,
yeah,
it's never a good thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a good one. Thank you. So, Michelle, you are very involved in your local community. You are a Houston Black Leadership Institute alumna, a member of the Houston African American Bloggers Association, and have previously served with the Houston Black MBA Association and the Houston Area Young Professionals. So, have you ever been to Houston? Do you know where Houston is? Are you familiar with Houston area?
I visit on occasion. Only on the weekends.
Right, exactly. So wait, do you consider yourself an extrovert? Do you consider yourself an extrovert? And also, how can entrepreneurs who may identify as introverts, right, begin to get more comfortable in their social settings?
I know this may sound cliche. I do consider myself an ambivert. And the reason why I'm in the middle. So I'm both introvert and extrovert.
Okay.
So I love to watch a good SVU marathon, you know?
Yeah.
But I do know when I'm on.
Okay.
And I know that. Like, I know when to turn it on. And I'm very good when I'm on, but I'm very good at crashing as well. Good crash.
Okay.
And I've been able to separate those two. And I think people have to understand that and tap into that. You know, I've especially when I'm doing my professional speaking, I thrive off of people's engagements. Even the way I talk, I'm like, yeah, right. You know, what do you think? I'm always looking for feedback, and I thrive off of that. And I also understand, you know, when and how I need a rest. And I think people just have to tap into that as well. And I think it's a couple of I mean, there are people, they understand they're introverts and they understand they're extroverts, but you have to understand, where does your energy come from? Like, how do you get energy?
Okay.
And I think people know how they get energy.
You said you don't think people know how they get energy?
No, I don't think they know. They just know they have the energy, but they don't know how they gain the energy.
Okay. So how do you gain energy if you don't know where it's coming from? And by that, what do you mean? You mean just how to turn it on, if you will? Like when you're out, when you're around other people? Is that what you mean as far as turning on energy?
Right. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, when I do my speaking engagements, I thrive off of involvement, right?
Okay.
So I'm that person that I'm walking in the crowd, you know, talking to people, all that kind of stuff. I'm never going to, and I'm not trying to knock anyone, but I'm not going to feel like I'm too high or I'm stuffy. Like I'm talking to you before and after the event, preferably before, because that warmth of conversation we had before, it's going to lead me to do a better presentation.
Sure.
That's how I gain my energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At the same time, and I tell people, my clients that I coach all the time, nothing's wrong with taking a break at a networking event. And nothing's wrong with stepping away, going to the bathroom, refresh, stepping outside to get some fresh air, give yourself that little pep talk. Hey, we can do this.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I think sometimes we just, it's kind of like, and I'm an extremist, right? And I have no problem pulling from both sides. But you either have that person that's just sitting there in the corner and they're scrolling through Facebook, or you have the other person that's just working the room, collecting cards and not
engaging.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and if you're in the middle, that's fine. Just take a break, eat your food, the snacks. It's okay. And jump back in there. But once again, you have to figure out what is going to work best for you in order for you to be effective and efficient in any setting, whether it's networking or even at work or in your business.
Sure. I always find like I go into events very intentional. Like what is my objective? My objective is to add value. Like how many people can I give a connection to or give a word to, or, you know, something that it's an exchange. Then I'm not just seeking as opposed to what can I give to you as well.
Right.
And I think that that's what the Black Enterprise Entrepreneur Summit really was. That was such an exchange of resources and encouragement, even at that level, right? It was just a really strong sort of exchange oriented event. And I think that was a powerful takeaway from that.
Yeah, and one thing I like about conferences, and especially now because of technology, you have the apps and you have all the attendees listed and sponsors listed on there. And social media with the hashtag, you can tweet before and after the conference and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I think that does allow you to be more intentional at bigger events and conferences because so much information is available versus going to, just a local meetup or whatever. But I think that's what my book is about. It's about value-based networking, right? Finding your value, or at least that's what the second book is trying to go deeper in, is finding your value, right? Because so many times we're looking for the nuggets, but we're not providing the nuggets.
Oh, yeah. So good.
Right? Because it's like, what's in it for me? I need.
Yeah.
But, let's really have value-based networking where we both have something to offer in exchange. And we also have to get out of the habit of reciprocation can only be between me and you, me and me, right? Because we have, in 2 months, we have, I don't even think LaToshia, shout out to her and her family.
LaToshia Norwood. Hey, girl. Hey. LaToshia Norwood of, what's her project management?
L'Renee.
L'Renee and Associates is the best project management company in the city of Houston, Texas. She can do global business. She can do national business. Get at LaToshia Norwood of L'Renee and Associates. Free advertisement for you, my dear LaToshia. She'll love it.
Yes, blessings to her, the family, and the new baby.
Yes.
But so when we met, I emailed her. I was like, thanks for the... Yeah. I emailed her. I said, thanks for the contact. Oh, nice. But I don't even think, does she know what we're plotting to take over world domination?
She has no idea. Well, you know what? She kind of may know. And the reason why is because I feel like I high level mentioned it to you when we first met and she was right there.
True.
So that's interesting. So yeah. But we'll get into that. Sorry for audience. I know you're like, what are y'all talking about? Let us in on the inside scoop. Oh, it's coming soon. Listen up. Keep listening.
Right. But to that statement, I think a lot of us, some people, I'll use myself an example, I'll be so focused, I can only help LaToshia. I can only help LaToshia out. And then I'm missing this opportunity with Nia. Right? So lots of times, that value is exchanged, whether, triangle, square, whatever you want to call it. And it's not always one dimensional.
Yeah, that's good. Value exchange is not just one dimensional. That's good. I like it. All right. Michelle, let's talk about your fabulous podcast, Networking with Michelle, which you so graciously had me on very recently to discuss, of course, all the behind the scenes Gradient Global, all things Gradient Global, why I love this company and how I got to this point. So thank you very much again.
You're welcome.
And you've interviewed many influencers, including Gary Vaynerchuk and Paul Brunson and Nia Perry. I'm just kidding.
Hey, absolutely.
We're getting there. We're working on it one podcast at a time. Okay. So Gary V, which is, not an easy get, as they say in media. And Paul Brunson, which, as you were even speaking earlier, even on the value add networking, I feel like I've heard him also talk in those same veins. So I think you've got a great sort of, you're mimicking in a sense, great other thought leaders. So I totally understand where you're coming from with the value add networking. So that's great. So what led you sort of to podcasting in the first place? And really, what do you love most about it?
Oh man, so many things had led me to podcasting. So when I wrote my book, Network Navigate, in 2014, I stumbled across podcasting because I was trying to promote my book. I thought I was going to hit up different bloggers, and somehow podcasts came up. And some of my earlier interviews, two people were like, you should have your own podcast. There's so much information. And I believe anytime two people tell you something, that's a confirmation for you to look into it.
Okay.
Not necessarily do it, but to look into it. But when that was said amongst whomever gave me that great advice, things were just lining up. and I was able to get my podcast up and running in 90 days. And at that time, my main priorities were, how can I increase my brand reach the cheapest way possible? And I know I have a lot of books in me. So it was like, how can I get this information in interviews and eventually create and repurpose content? Those were some of the main priorities at the time.
Yes.
As far as how, I think you said, how has it benefited, or what
do you love most? I mean, and how has it benefited? Whatever you want to speak to in that respect, because you've done it quite a while.
Once again, just the best decision I made in 2015, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like every time I interview someone, that's the interview I need to keep going. I feel that way when it comes to interviews and reading a book, right? And lots of times I don't need to read the whole book, but whatever I did read is what I needed at the time.
Interesting.
And that's how I feel about my interviews.
Yeah.
And there's been times when, and I'm kind of going through this right now, where I was like, man, I do not want to do an interview. And that person would just say something so valuable, something so motivational to me.
Yes.
That would just slap me all awake.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, time to go.
Yeah.
Or that was the missing piece. And I'm able to plug it and keep it going.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even on my radar. Once again, I'm going to do this podcast because I want to be a thought leader. Me. But here, I'm so blessed to have people pour into me on an ongoing basis. And I don't even know if these people realize how much they've blessed me, not just with the interview, but now we're connected on Facebook and we do business with each other, one way or another. It's just it's an amazing thing. Obviously, I've expanded my network, but
yeah, exactly.
It's an amazing thing.
Exactly right. I mean, and that's what it's all about. It's an amazing tool, this podcasting platform that has so many legs and has so many opportunities. So I'm excited to do it as well. Okay, Michelle.
I do want to say this.
Please.
Now, you mentioned Gary Vee. And I was fortunate the way that wasn't in a formal interview, but, I think lots of times, I want to speak on this. Okay. Lots of times we focus so much on the heavy hitters. We ignore the people on the climb, right? Like I feel like I'm on the climb, and there's heavy hitters that I don't know about because I'm not in their industry.
Okay.
So, for example, I met Dr. Dion Metzger at a conference, and we were just talking, and she's a therapist, and and she was like, "Oh, I'd love to be on your podcast." I was like, "Okay, girl, yeah, whatever." So casual. And then we did the interview, and when I posted it, and when I saw her reach, I was like, "What?
Isn't that something?" I know.
Like, wait a minute, who are you? So, sometimes it's not just about, these top name people, but it's the people that are grinding it out right there with you. They're probably on the same playing field as you, but they're in a different industry.
Okay.
And we just got to be cognizant of that as well.
That's
when
right.
It comes to building relationships.
All right. That's our experience, our expertise to you, our dear listeners. So glad to be working with you, Michelle.
Likewise.
So, Michelle, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to you for everything, our relationship, we've come from, our future together, and also for spending a bit of your valuable time with me today and the Gradient Global. Well, who is that? But the Gradients Global Collective podcast listeners, you truly do exemplify the innate brilliance and moxie of Black women entrepreneurs globally. And I am honored to have gotten to know you just a little bit. And I'm super proud of you as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. Likewise.